Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today we've got some reflections on the semifinal round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, as well as other news and notes around the NHL. Thank you for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us again here at I-80 Sports. Make sure that you check out our website down below, i80sports.com, for all content related to sports such as the NHL, which is why you're here right now, and NFL, MLS, college football, and NBA content as well. And while you're there, hit up our shop, get yourself a t-shirt as low as $8. It helps us, it helps you to escape this heat in the summertime. And as always, make sure that you follow us down below on our Twitter at I80_SportsNHL. The road to 1,000 is still on, and you can join today if you are not following already. And if you are following already, thank you so much for the support. We truly appreciate all the support that we have been getting lately. But it's time to talk some NHL and Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm Brian. He's Tom. How you doing today, Tom?
Doing well. More in depth in the playoffs here. Starting to wind down a little bit. We're down to the end of the semifinals and the end of the Final Four, and we could very well have a Stanley Cup final set by this time next week. Well, we definitely will, but we could very well have it set in the next few days.
Yeah, I think the fun thing about this semifinal round is we are down to a best of 3, and we're going to be talking about that momentarily. But first, we got to get through some NHL news first. So definitely, if you're here to hear our reflections on the semifinal rounds, make sure you stick around to about maybe 5 to 10 minutes into this video where we're going to start talking about that. But first, we've got plenty of news to be talking about right now because there is a lot to cover right now. We'll try to go through this as fast as we can. First and foremost, probably the oldest piece of news that we're covering from this past week, the potential number 1 overall pick, Owen Power, the 6'5" defenseman from the University of Michigan, is contemplating staying another year at Michigan. And you have to feel like this is because of the ineptitude of the Buffalo Sabres lately, who are going to be drafting number 1 overall. It kind of is left to be said, if he decides to stay in Michigan, what does this do to the top of the draft? Does Buffalo change course here? Tom, what do you think?
You know something? I really don't know. I mean, I think they very well could still take him, but then if he refuses to sign, that's a whole nother bag of worms. It's eerily similar to what happened with Eric Lindros in Quebec all those years ago now, almost 30 years, actually 30 years ago now. It's very similar to that, and I just think maybe Owen Power is sitting there and he's looking at the dumpster fire that the Buffalo Sabres really are right now. Their all-world star, Jack Eichel's wanting out of town. They don't seem to really have a course that they want to go to. They had a course last year, bringing in veterans like Taylor Hall and Eric Staal and shipped them both out of town. And right now, it's a team that's in shambles and nobody seems to know where they're going. So it might just be Power saying that, okay, either A, he doesn't want to play in Buffalo, or B, he's like he's trying to down his draft stock so a team with a better future, or maybe even a team that's a bubble playoff team, will take him, and he won't be stuck in Buffalo, who's looking like they're going to have problems for a while.
It's tough to say, and I think Owen Power is trying to do what is in his best interest to do. Obviously, if he decides to go back to Michigan for this year, he is still eligible to be drafted in this current NHL draft. So that is something to monitor. It doesn't mean that he can't be picked. Another team could swoop in the first round and take him and maybe stash him and try to sign him later. But we have seen other instances where players have been drafted and then haven't signed with their original team. Some more recent players that fit that bill: Will Butcher, currently of the New Jersey Devils, was drafted by Colorado and decided to sign with the Devils. Alex Kerfoot, current forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs, was drafted by the Devils, signed with Colorado after college. And of course, the most infamous case from the past 5 years, Tom, you know him very well, Jimmy Vesey, who found himself in Buffalo. He was also originally signed in New York, but he was a highly sought after college talent back in his day in college. So we'll see what happens with Owen Power. This is going to be something that we're going to be monitoring over the next month as we lead up to the NHL draft. So you want to make sure you stick around for all of that. Along with some NHL potential draft news, trade rumors have been heating up for some major talent around the NHL, including Columbus defenseman Seth Jones and Buffalo Sabres forward and captain Jack Eichel. There are rumors abound for Eichel. There are about 8 teams that are apparently interested on Eichel, and Eichel could be a name that could move sooner rather than later. It looks like the Eichel era in Buffalo is going to be coming to an end fairly soon. One team that we are going to highlight as a potential team that could be in on them is the Chicago Blackhawks here, which have seen multiple rumors around Jack Eichel, which could see a package of at least Kirby Dach and multiple picks leaving Chicago to acquire the talent of Jack Eichel. Or if they wanted to go the Seth Jones route, it would also take that type of haul to acquire Seth Jones. We could also see a similar situation with Carolina defenseman Dougie Hamilton, who could do a sign and trade type of move out of Carolina because he is due to be a free agent this summer. So that being said, Tom, I'm going to ask you, who do you think moves first? Do you think both players are moved, that being Seth Jones and Jack Eichel?
I think I definitely think that Seth Jones has moved either at or before the draft. As far as Eichel's concerned, it was getting to the point where he was going to the Rangers or the Kings, or he was going to a contender, and now it seems like the only 2 teams that really seem to be in this Eichel sweepstakes now are the Anaheim Ducks and the Chicago Blackhawks. And then the trade that Larry Brooks from the New York Post had said last week, I quoted, it was saying that it would be Jonathan Toews, Kirby Dach, and an 11th to bring Eichel in. I think that if Chicago does that, they're giving up way too much. Eichel's still unproven. Toews, despite sitting out the year, actually had his best statistical years after they won their cups, believe it or not, after he got his contract. It's funny because Toews, when they were winning their cups, was kind of a marginal player, but he was a clutch player in the postseason. Now he's having his best statistical regular season years now. So to give up Dach, who's a big part of the future, to give up Toews, who won you 3 Stanley Cups and was now probably playing his best hockey, and if you saw him in the playoffs last year, he really turned back the clock, and to give it an 11th round pick for a guy who was the projected 90-point player before COVID hit last year, but has never really lived up his potential, I don't think that's going to happen. I think if Chicago did, it would be a big, big mistake. I do think Eichel probably winds up in Anaheim, to tell you the truth. As far as Jones is concerned, I know the Toronto Maple Leafs were big on him. I'm also hearing rumblings that the Philadelphia Flyers want him as well. I guess it really depends who can give up what. I know the Leafs are going to go hard for Seth Jones. I know that much. There's rumors of them flipping Mitch Marner over for him. I don't know how realistic they are, but I know Toronto is very, very, very high on Seth Jones. I know that much.
Toronto would be an interesting landing place for Seth Jones, just simply because it was glaring. They need defensive help right now. As much as their forward core did not carry them through to that next round of the playoffs, which was disappointing, especially collectively between Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, the glaring need is on the defensive front. They need to build outward from their core. Seth Jones could obviously bring a big presence on their defense. Another player to watch is Dougie Hamilton to potentially go to Toronto. If Toronto decides to try to sign Dougie Hamilton, they're going to need to make a contrary move as well. They'll need to move a player with a larger cap hit as well. That being William Nylander, rather. I'm already thinking of the playoffs in like a minute or two, but William Nylander could be a player that could be moved. Another person obviously could be Mitch Marner. He comes with a heavy price tag, so a lot of teams are gonna be hasty to try to go after a Mitch Marner, but there's no doubt on the talent level of Mitch Marner, though. There's no doubt whatsoever. Dougie Hamilton could be an interesting name to go to Toronto, though. Out of all the names that we have presented here between Jack Eichel, Seth Jones, and Dougie Hamilton, I do believe that Jack Eichel is the name that moves first. And Tom, I'm going to actually agree with you here. I think Anaheim is a very interesting landing spot for Jack Eichel, but I wonder what it's going to take to get him. I wonder what they would have to give up. I think Jamie Drysdale would be a player that would be in play there. I think the number 3 overall pick would also be in play if Anaheim really wanted to go that route as well. So it's going to be something interesting to monitor over the next coming weeks before we lead up to the draft. Buffalo has made it very apparent they would like to have multiple first-round picks this year as they are buying into a potential rebuild. Going forward now, Carolina head coach and Jack Adams winner Rod Brind'Amour has agreed to a 3-year extension with the Carolina Hurricane, and this now means that the Seattle Kraken are probably not going to be getting Rod Brind'Amour as their first head coach. Like a lot of people had kind of been fantasy picking for him to go, especially with Ron Francis as a GM. As some may know, Ron Francis and Rod Brind'Amour were former teammates and Stanley Cup winners together in Carolina. And it's looking like all roads are now pointing to Rick Tocchet maybe taking the job as the first head coach of the Seattle Kraken. Tom, do you think that is the consensus, or do you think there is a name that could come out of left field?
You know what? From what I've been reading, I really do think all roads are leading to Rick Tocchet. Obviously, my choice, well, not my choice, my thought was it was going to be Brind'Amour because him and Ron Francis were close and were teammates in Carolina, worked together in Carolina, and just because I didn't want Gerard Gallant to go there, although I don't think in Gerard Gallant's mind he was ever going there, because then everybody would have said to Gerard Gallant, okay, well, look what you did in Vegas. Well, now you're with another expansion team. You got to do it again. And I just don't think that would have been realistic. But you know what? I read they have interviewed Rick Tocchet 3 times. And I really do think with Rick Tocchet, he's getting out of maybe one of the most backwards organizations in sports, not just knocking sports in Arizona. And he's really going up there with nothing to lose. He's going up there with nothing to lose. You know, the pressure's not on him, you know, because the pressure, if it was Gallant, the pressure would have been, okay, you brought Vegas to the finals in their expansion year. Well, you damn well better bring us there too. If it was Brind'Amour, you guys worked magic with the team that was almost going nowhere in Carolina. Well, now you need to do it here. I think bringing Tocchet in there, it's a nothing to lose thing. Tocchet, you know, he's a good coach, but he doesn't have that background of bringing a team out of nowhere. And I think it's a safe choice too if they do indeed bring him in. He doesn't have a bad reputation. He's not a winning coach, but he's a decent coach. So I think that, yeah, that's probably your best choice over there in Seattle is bringing him in.
I think it's a very decent choice. I think a lot of people overanalyze bringing in a coach for an expansion team right now, especially with the success of the Vegas Golden Knights from 3 years ago and making it to the Stanley Cup final as an expansion team. The last time that happened was in the 1960s with the St. Louis Blues. But I think a lot of people,
that was different, though. That was different.
It was insanely different. It was insanely different. You're comparing apples and oranges.
You had all 6 teams in the West Division. So the way they set that up was one expansion team was going to play in the final. And
exactly.
Basically, it wasn't going to play in the final. It was to lose to Jean Beliveau and Henri Richard and those great 1960s Montreal teams. It was pretty much, okay, you're in the final. Now you're going to basically bring your head kicked in.
Here's your consolation prize. Now get smacked. But no, it's true. And it's comparing apples and oranges, but a lot of people are quick to say it's just like, well, the St. Louis is, but
it was set up that way. They set that up that way.
Yeah, a team was going to do that. They were going to enter the history book regardless.
Yeah.
But in Seattle's case, it's unfair for a lot of people to kind of look at whoever's going to be coming in as coach and putting the Gallant expectation on them and putting that weight on their shoulders of just like, hey, can we be just as good as Vegas? Because that's unfair. There have been, for every Vegas Golden Knights expansion team, there has been a Columbus Blue Jackets, there has been an Atlanta Thrashers, there has been a San Jose Sharks. You've got to take your bumps and bruises, unfortunately, when you first enter the league. So now, the Vegas Golden Knights have not taken any bumps and bruises since being in the league. They've been a playoff contender every year since their inception. So that should not be the expectation for Seattle. I think Rick Tocchet would be a fantastic choice. I think for Rick Tocchet, I think it would also be a great choice for him because he's already on the West Coast. He's going from Arizona to Seattle. It's not too cumbersome of a move as if he was going to be going from like Arizona to New York, changing coasts. So at least with this, there's some at least rough familiarity with the area, coming in fresh into a job with, like, as Tom said, no expectation. What do you got to lose? You're trying to take an expansion team to a level of competency, not necessarily to the playoffs, but to be, a contender against other teams to make it to the playoffs. Maybe they make it to the playoffs. If Seattle makes it to the playoffs in their first year, congratulations, because you guys earned it. It's not going to be easy, though, for sure. Lastly, the last thing that we do want to just lightly touch on real quick. We're going to be really brief with this, though. Minnesota forward and Calder Trophy winner Kirill Kaprizov is threatening to go back to the KHL. Apparently, talks for an extension have been going poorly, apparently, but we're going to be monitoring this one as time goes on and see how realistic this one is. There hasn't been a lot that has been said about this. Tom, do you agree? Not a lot has been disclosed about this.
Not a lot's been disclosed. Somebody said that, there were a couple of things that I heard. The first thing I heard was they were arguing over the term of the contract. Minnesota wanted to lock him in long term. He wanted a short term deal. They wanted him long term, so they couldn't agree on that. Something else that was part of it was Olympic participation, which it's looking like the players will go back next year. But at the same time, nothing. I mean, it was said last year that, okay, yeah, the CBA set up for the players to go back. But at the same time, nobody's really said anything about it either. So I think that's partly on his mind, too. I think he wants to play in the Olympics for Russia, or Olympic athletes from Russia, or red jerseys with the letter R on it, whatever they're going to be in the next Olympics. Who knows? And I think another one that somebody said was, that he was at a wedding in Moscow and he drunkenly said, I'll come back and I guess somebody heard him say it and the rumor got spread. And so, yeah, there isn't a lot about it. But the third one I take and throw in the trash. It's garbage. It's something I read on Twitter. But the first two, yeah, they're legit. I think it's really the term. I think they want him locked in long term, and I don't think he's sure that he wants to stay there long term. That's the problem. A lot of these Russian players, when they're playing in cities like, say, Minnesota or like Columbus, if you look at Artemi Panarin in Columbus, once they get into the league and, get a foothold, they want to go play in a big city. They want to go play in a New York or Chicago or a Los Angeles. They don't want to play in Minnesota where roughly the winters are almost the same thing as Moscow. There's 5 feet of snow on the ground 11 months out of the year. Not. I'm just joking, only Minnesota people, but you understand what I'm saying. It was the same thing with Panarin in Columbus. He didn't want to stay there long term. He wanted the glitz. He wanted the glamour. He wanted the big city life. And I'm not sure if Kaprizov will get that in Minnesota, and maybe that's why he wants to do short term. So when his deal is up, he can look at where he's going, what he thinks he's worth, where the Wild are going, and then maybe make a decision to, do I want to stay in Minnesota and help this team win? Do I want to get out of here and go play in a bigger market? It's just eerily similar to what happened with Artemi Panarin, now that I really think about it.
I think Minnesota is going to be in a real dilemma with it, in the sense that they're kind of in that tween phase of their progress as a team. They have youth that has been injected into this team and will have injected in the future with a player like Marco Rossi and Kirill Kaprizov, winning the Calder Trophy and having the season that he had is awesome for Minnesota. But there's other aspects that need to be considered. The general consensus is Matt Dumba is probably going to be exposed to the expansion draft and taken by Seattle. That's a big blow to their defensive core. Ryan Suter and Zach Parise aren't getting any younger, and they're still locked up in cap hell. So you got this weird crossroad right now for Minnesota, and this is kind of be crucial to see what happens with these negotiations and making sure that they do the right thing, lock up Kirill Kaprizov so long as that's what he wants, and go from there. Before we move on to our playoff talk, a quick rest in peace to two very good former hockey players, Tom Curvers and Rene Robert. Tom Curvers, who spent time with the New Jersey Devils as well as the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Rene Robert, who also spent time with the Buffalo Sabres. A huge blow to all organizations that had the pleasure of working with these two fine individuals. Tom Curvers, most famously, unfortunately, is not known for some that he did on the ice, but actually being the player that Toronto traded for in exchange for a first-round pick that did end up turning into Scott Niedermayer, and Rene Robert, who spent a long time on the top six for the Buffalo Sabres during a golden age for the Buffalo Sabres and for Buffalo fans alike. So a huge rest in peace to both of those players, and our thoughts and prayers are with their families at this time, at this very, very difficult time. But we apologize for going so long with NHL news, because time to talk about what we're actually here to really talk about, and that's the semifinal action of the Stanley Cup, which once the Stanley Cup begins, guys, you can check us out a little bit more regularly. We're going to be trying to give you our reactions game by game as best as we can. So definitely make sure you check us out on Twitter and Facebook for all of those notifications related to that, guys. So let's dive into this. The first reflection that we have here is the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the New York Islanders. The series is currently sitting at 3-2 in favor of Tampa Bay. Game one, the Islanders came out strong early with a 2-1 victory over Tampa Bay. Semyon Varlamov looked great in that game. And then it went tic-tac-toe almost from there. Tampa Bay in game two going up 4-2 in that game. Game three, Tampa Bay taking that game as well, 2-1. And then in game four, Islanders upsetting Tampa Bay 3-2, only for the Islanders to get absolutely smacked last night, 8-0 by Tampa Bay in game five. What a collapse by the Islanders last game. They just did not show up. So you know that the Islanders are going to be playing very, very, very pissed off in the next game. Matt Barzal certainly played pissed off last night, and hopefully he doesn't face any repercussions from that. But we're going to have to see what happens. But we're going to go over our thoughts to that in just a second. The other one that we have to recap as well, of course, is the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Montreal Canadiens. The series is currently tied at 2. Game 5 is underway as we speak. But here's how it broke down. Game 1, Vegas took that game 4-1. Then in game 2, the Canadiens came back, won 3-2. And then in game 3, what do you know? Once again, Montreal, deja vu, winning 3-2, but this time in overtime. And then in game 4, Vegas said, well, we got to get in on that overtime action, and won in OT 2-1 2 nights ago. So game 5 is currently underway. So hopefully you guys are checking that out as we speak at the moment. But both series, exciting series, hard fought, definitely physical. Tom, what are your thoughts so far? Let's start with the Tampa Bay series. What's your thought on the Tampa Bay series so far?
Well, the Tampa Bay series, the Islanders throughout these whole playoffs have kind of been a dominant team throughout most of their series. Like, they'll find a point in the series where they'll find like a weak point or a break point on their opponent, and they'll take it over. And they'll dominate games, and they won't let their opponents breathe. And that's sort of what they did against the Penguins and the Bruins. It's not sort of what they did. It is what they did. No, sort of. In this series against Tampa, to tell you the truth, the Islanders, to me, have maybe only played 3 good periods of hockey. The first 2 periods of game 1 and the second period of game 4. Tampa's really been in control most of the series, and it's unlike that with the Islanders. I thought that the Islanders would maybe have games where they would be the dominant team and Tampa would be shaking their heads, but outside of 3 periods of hockey, this really has been Tampa's series. And you know what? The same MO is what you're seeing with the Islanders, which you saw with the Islanders in the first series, where it would be seesaw through the first 3 games, and the Islanders would win game 4, and then they'd either go out there in game 5 and just take game 5, whether it be in overtime, whether it be in dominating fashion. Well, game 5 was won in dominating fashion last night by the other team. Tampa just went out there and took care of business. Tampa played with an agenda. If you saw the third period of Game 4, Tampa came out, and they came out full of you-know-what and vinegar, and they still had it last night in Game 5 and won 8-0. Now, at the same time, although I'm saying Tampa has been the better team through the 5, I am not ending this series right now. I am not. So many times we've seen somebody blow another team out in a series and thinking they have it won. 2 examples. If anybody remembers the 09 finals, Detroit and Pittsburgh, Game 5. Remember, Detroit blew the doors off Pittsburgh. Fleury was sent to the bench. Penguins looked lost. And myself and just about everybody else said Detroit's going to win a second straight cup this year. Pittsburgh's not coming back from this. Well, what happened? Pittsburgh came back, won 2 games, and won the cup. Although that Game 7, there's still some controversial stuff that I believe happened, but that's a story for another day. And look back as recently as 2019. Game 6, St. Louis Blues on home ice have a chance to win the Stanley Cup in front of their fans. And what happens? The Boston Bruins come in and blow the doors off the Blues. And I think myself and everyone else after that game said, well, here's another cup for the Bruins. This team that's been underachieving is finally going to at least get a second cup on their resume. Well, what happened in Game 7? St. Louis went out there and utterly dominated the Bruins and won their first cup. So going into Game 6, I'm not giving this series to Tampa. I expect the Islanders to come out with everything they have and possibly send this 7. You cannot write this New York Islanders team off. You can't. It's just not going to happen. As far as Matt Barzal is concerned, I don't think he's going to get suspended. I can't see the league suspending him on the day of their biggest game of the season, possibly the last game they'll ever play at Nassau Coliseum. I can't see the league coming out and suspending their best player. I think Barzal does play tomorrow, and I'm curious to see what happens. I'm thinking that the Islanders will win Game 6, but every time I've thought the Islanders will lose, they've won. So now that I think they win, watch them lose. But who knows? I don't play the games. I watch them, and I talk to you guys about them on here. So tomorrow's going to be a very interesting game.
Yeah, that's going to be a must-watch game. Game 6 of the Tampa Bay New York Islanders series for sure. I'm going to agree. It's with Matt Barzal of the New York Islanders, I really don't see him getting suspended for that cross-check and 5-minute major and game misconduct. Though Winnipeg fans would really like to argue that, like, you can't kick out our best player right now type of deal. So I understand it from both standpoints. I understand it from, both ends of the sword, but I do think it would be a bad idea by the league to suspend Matt Barzal, especially in a pivotal Game 6 like this. If you really want to set an example, this is not the right time to do so. Overall, Tampa Bay has been very strong for the most part throughout the series, but that does not mean you should sleep on the New York Islanders. Barry Trotz's teams, as I've said in the past, they just play different. And there's a reason why he is the head coach. He is the reason why he is the best acquisition of the past 5 years for the New York Islanders. I will openly and honestly say that. He is the best acquisition that the Islanders have made, arguably of the past 10 years. Barry Trotz is the reason why the Islanders are here. Obviously, from the hard work ethic of the rest of this team as well, because they have to play the games, not him. But his coaching and his influence has absolutely been a major factor for the New York Islanders. You can see it in the way they play. Sure, is it a boring style of hockey? Is it a lot of, keep and handle the puck and wait for your shot? Yeah, it is. And a lot of people brand that as kind of, not so fun hockey. Is it strongly defensive? Absolutely it is. But you know what? Sometimes a really good defense is a really good offense. And the Islanders are proving that in these games. Obviously, they didn't prove it last night in Game 5, but maybe in Game 6, this is where they truly prove that. And this series could go the distance to 7 games. If there was going to be a series to do so, this would definitely be the series to go the distance. Now, speaking of other series that could go the distance, the Vegas Golden Knights and the Montreal Canadiens are currently deadlocked 2-2. And I'm going to start with my reflection real quick on this. Tom, you're probably going to end up disagreeing in a little bit of a fashion, but I do not like the officiating in this series. I think there have been a lot of uneven calls. I think there have been a lot of blatantly missed calls that have led to some very, very questionable playing on both ends. Just to highlight a couple cases, you had Corey Perry take a really, really nasty high stick that I think was very, very dangerous. And Corey Perry ended up bleeding because of that, and very obviously showing blood. And the protocol for that is bare minimum of a 4-minute minor. There was nothing called. You had a blatant punch in the face from a Vegas player to a Montreal player, nothing called. You had a blatant boarding call from a Montreal player on a Vegas Golden Knights player, nothing called. So the officiating has been very uneven in this series, and I'll be interested to see how the rest of the series is called. I think Vegas has played very, very well. Their defense has stepped up. Alex Martinez is a name that I got to highlight again this week. He has got to be averaging at least 4 blocks per game. It's been huge for the Vegas Golden Knights to have him on the top pairing with Alex Pietrangelo. Alex Pietrangelo, who has shown up very, very well as well in this series. Alex Pietrangelo has played so well. Other players I got to highlight here as well. Shea Theodore has also played very well for the Vegas Golden Knights. And Vegas has been playing a hard-nosed style of hockey. That being said, Montreal has been matching them every step of the way as well. And just to highlight a couple players here, rookie Cole Caulfield has been amazing in this series for Montreal. Nick Suzuki has been fantastic in this series for Montreal. Jesperi Kotkaniemi is starting to get it going as well. Tyler Toffoli has been a factor, and Shea Weber, he is hungry for a Stanley Cup. He is hungry to finally get a Stanley Cup and win it for the Montreal Canadiens. Not only for the first time since 1993 for the Montreal Canadiens, but for the first time for a Canadian team since 1993. So we'll see if that's something that happens. We'll see if Montreal moves on in this series. But Tom, what's your reflection so far from this Vegas and Montreal series? I know that you lagged out a little bit there. I know that you kind of joined us midway through, but what's your reaction?
Yeah, guys, sorry about that. My router decided to play some games with me right now, but I'm back.
It went Union.
Yeah, basically. So it's funny because a few episodes ago I said that this was going to be the slaughter series. I said whoever came out of that North Division final, whether it be Winnipeg or Montreal, was going to get their heads kicked in. And obviously it hasn't happened yet. And the funny part about it was after game 1, I thought that this thing was going to be over in 4, the way Vegas just dominated the Habs in game 1. But for them to come back and win 3-2 in game 2 and then win that game in overtime on home ice showed a lot of character. And I'll tell you what, even on Sunday night I watched the game, and Montreal seemed to control most of the time. They had that game in the bag until probably the end of the third period when Vegas tied it. What I've liked so far is just the resiliency they have. Carey Price, Shea Weber. I'm loving what Cole Caulfield's doing. I really, really am. He is really going to be something else for them. The only problem with Caulfield and Kotkaniemi is, the question is with the Habs is, what do you do after this year? Do you try to keep building with these guys, or do you maybe try to sell some guys off and try to get a high pick in the next 2 drafts and then build going forward with those guys? It's a question that's popped in my head. If I were the Habs, what do you do? Those are good pieces, but I'm not sure those are pieces you could build a contender around. But alas, right now, there's a lot to like about this series. It's been very surprising. Vegas themselves too, they've played very well. 4 solid lines yet again. The thing that's making me scratch my head with Vegas is this goaltending controversy. Not playing Fleury in game 4, even though they won, it's a head scratcher to me, because I don't understand the onus of sitting the guy you've been riding with the entire playoffs outside of one game in the conference finals. Somebody said to me the other night, oh, well, you sit him because he's tired. I've never heard of a team sitting a goalie in a conference final because he's tired. Somebody suggested that a couple years ago in the Rangers-Tampa conference final with Lundqvist, and I said, you guys are nuts? Somebody else also suggested to send him down to the minors for a conditioning stint in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is one of the top 5 dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. But the goaltending controversy in Vegas, it's funny. It's a head-scratcher why they started Lehner the other night, and now they went back to Fleury. This uneasiness with goaltending, I've seen it happen in the early rounds, but in the conference finals, it's showing weakness. It's showing the most important man on the ice in the playoffs is your goalie, and they're showing that they don't have the confidence in him, in either one of them right now. And the funny part about it is this. Game 5 tonight, you have Montreal up 1-0. We're going into the second right now. But I'm telling you right now, if the Habs pull this game out tonight, it's the Habs series to lose. You're going back to Montreal with a chance to go to the finals in Game 6. And if the Habs win tonight, it's their series to lose. Whereas I think if Vegas wins Game 5, I think that the Habs will win Game 6, and this will go 7 games. So it's been interesting. It's been a lot of back and forth, but I'm telling you what, the cracks are showing in the Vegas Golden Knights this series. They really are. They really are. And I'm a little surprised by it because I really thought that this was going to be a short 4 or 5 game series. I'm very surprised. But yeah, to have Montreal win that cup for the first time in 30 years and to win the cup for the first time in the Bell Center. Because it's funny, they talk about all the history and the championships in Montreal. All those championships were won in the Montreal Forum. Fun fact for tonight, the only 2 championships won at the Bell Center were won by U.S. national teams. 96 World Cup and 2017 World Juniors were the only 2 championships won inside that building, both by U.S. teams.
Chalk that one up for America. But, yeah, I mean, I'm a proponent and I'm an advocate for rung what you brung. And it made me scratch my head with Pete DeBoer, the head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights, to go to Robin Lehner for a crucial Game 4. And I mean, it paid off. It paid off a hell of a lot better than it did in Game 1 of the Avs series. But what kind of respect is that to a Vezina finalist? The guy who got you to this point. The guy who I tried to order a t-shirt from. And I literally kid you not, guys, because I got to show you this. I got my Fleury shirt, but get this. I had to custom make it, so we've got the Fleury on the back. Tom, you got to look at this, dude. So I've got the Fleury on the back. You got, it's Vegas lettering. Ready for what's on the front? What they accidentally sent?
They sent a Penguins one?
They sent a Penguins one.
No, you know what I was looking at? And I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention to you. They fined Barzal's going to play Game 6. They fined him $5,000. I just looked that up on my phone real quick.
Breaking news right here at I-80 Sports. But yeah, they sent me a Pittsburgh one, and it's a custom order. So like I double checked my order. I'm like, I didn't order a Pittsburgh one, did I?
Well, that's all the rage now. That's all the rage now, making like double shirts. So it'd be like ordering it'd be like having Ranger colors with a Messier 11 on the back and an Oilers logo on the front.
Yeah, but like, here's the thing. So I had to custom order it because Marc-Andre Fleury was sold out in t-shirts for Vegas. So I, did what everybody would have done and went to any name 00 and just typed in Fleury in 29. Did what everybody else did. Vegas Golden Knights got that. But it's getting fixed. I should have a Vegas shirt next week. Whether they're in the Stanley Cup or not, I will wear it once it is actually here. So I am living up to this. It's just more so like, well, as you can see, technical difficulties. Fun. But it will be interesting to see what happens here. Quick prediction, under a minute. Tom, who's going to the Stanley Cup final?
I'm going to be bold here. I'm going with what I wanted to go with. I'm going to probably be wrong, but I'm going with Tampa and Montreal. I know I said Tampa and Vegas, but this goaltending controversy in Vegas, while you're looking down there at another team with 4 solid lines and a solid goalie in net, I don't know, man. I don't know. If Montreal holds on tonight, I'm having a hard time seeing Vegas win Game 6 on Montreal and home ice with their rabid fans. And remember, the Habs have been in the conference finals recently, but against the Flyers and against the Rangers, they didn't have a freaking prayer of winning the series in either one.
Yeah. So I'm waffling on this one in my brain, but I'm actually going to make the opposite prediction of you. I'm going to go the New York Islanders and the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas Golden Knights because, come on, we've gotten this far. I'm riding that train. I've told you guys before, I've got to ride this train. For me to jump off now would be sacrilege. Even if they're the bad guy, I'm riding that train hard for the Vegas Golden Knights. I think they do pull it out in this series. And then for the New York Islanders, I just want to watch the world burn. I really would just love to see Tampa Bay fans lose their collective you-know-what over losing to the New York Islanders. I think it would just be poetic for a team that is $18 million over the cap to lose to a budget team in New York. I just think it would be utterly fantastic.
Can't root for them. I don't hate them as much as other Ranger fans do, but I cannot root for them. I'm sorry. I give them props on here. I give them props because we got to be neutral, and I give them props on what they do. I give them all the credit in the world. But as a Ranger fan, I cannot root for them. I just can't do it.
You guys know me, guys. I'm a neutral party. I am an unbiased Devils fan. But that being said, I'm not going to lie. I have a soft spot here for Kyle Palmieri, Travis Zajac, Andy Green, and the third string goal and the illustrious third or fourth string goaltender, depending on the day of the week, for the New York Islanders, America's own Corey Schneider. But anyway, we're going to be moving on from here to wrap up this week. Thank you all for joining us, of course, as usual. And if you like this video, make sure you like down below and comment down below as well. Join the conversation. We're usually going to be live, and we'd love for you guys to join the live conversation whenever we are live, which should be almost every video going forward, guys. It was just a little bit different this week just because, well, life happens. But we've got our question of the week. Tom, I'm going to let you present our question of the week and give me your answer first.
Sure. Well, it was funny. I was just, I don't know if any of you guys on here, Brian, you included, I don't know if you guys ever go on HF boards or frequent HF boards. I do it a lot. Just, to pass sometimes if I got nothing to do at work, I'll do it. If I'm just sitting around the house waiting on something, I'll go on it. I'll post on there. But I usually always like to go in the history of hockey forum and the history of hockey board rather. And I saw one the other day, and it was sort of, did you ever see a playoff series, excluding your favorite team, obviously, where you had two teams playing, and you looked at one team as like the hero, the good guy, and the other team as kind of like the villain or the bad guy. Now, obviously, I'm gonna exclude my favorite team, the Rangers, because obviously when your team's playing in a playoff series, you're the good guy and the other team's the villain. So I'm going to exclude them. I'm going to throw them out just because, that would just be extremely biased to do it that way. But if there was ever one series like that that I saw that I really, really thought you had one team who was sort of the good representing like good and one team representing evil, I'm actually going to go with the 2008 Stanley Cup Finals, believe it or not. You had the Detroit Red Wings, and in my eyes, Detroit Red Wings were the heroes. They were the good guys. And the Pittsburgh Penguins, who were sort of the villains. Now, let me explain myself a little bit further. At that time, the Penguins had just drafted Crosby, Malkin, and Fleury, which were three great picks, first overall. But at the same time, Mario Lemieux basically ran the Penguins into the ground, shipped guys out of town like Robert Lang, like Jaromir Jagr, like Marty Straka. They had good players when Mario came back. So he could run the team into the ground, so he could get the league to give him money to keep them afloat. Remember, in 2006, he threatened to move them to Kansas City. He even went and toured the new arena Kansas City built just to have a professional hockey or basketball team there. So he ran them into the ground for the purpose of getting stars so the team would be good again, instead of having to do a proper rebuild or just having to suck it up for a few years. On the other end, you had the Red Wings. The Red Wings were kind of the darlings of the 90s and the 2000s, Every sport you have that dynasty, and I know in football you really wanted to hate the Patriots. In baseball at the time, well, it wasn't really the Patriots at the time. This was kind of before the Patriots. In baseball at the time, you had the Yankees' evil empire. But outside of Colorado Avalanche and Dallas Star fans, and maybe even St. Louis Blue fans at the time, I can't think of a bad thing to say about those Red Wings teams in the 90s. Maybe in 2002, they flexed their muscles with those checkbooks a little bit by bringing in guys like Brett Hull and Luc Robitaille and Dominic Hasek, to name a few. But really, those Red Wings teams just won because they were just better than everybody else. They just played better. They didn't win by cheap shotting people. They didn't win by crying to the refs. They didn't win by blatant bad calls. They just won because they were better than everybody. So around the time Lemieux was complaining about the bankruptcy and they were installing the salary cap, I remember somebody saying, this salary cap is installed to bring teams, especially like the Red Wings, down. And it kind of did happen too. And it was also a combination of the Red Wing stars at the time getting old, like Steve Yzerman, Sergei Fedorov, Brendan Shanahan. Yzerman, by 2008, was retired. Shanahan was in New York. Fedorov was, who the hell knows where he was, a has-been. But there they are again, those Detroit Red Wings, the team that the league tried to destroy, they tried to bring down. There they were. You had Nicholas Lidstrom, Pavel Datsyuk, Henrik Zetterberg, and you still had a lot of those core guys from the 90s like Draper and Maltby and McCarty and Holmstrom. And they went out there and they won the cup. Just in clean, dominating fashion. There were no BS calls. There were no cheap shots. The Red Wings just went out there and played better than the Penguins and won it. So, and I'll never forget how that series ended either. Marian Hossa, who the Penguins went and got and then bolted out of town, had the game at Game 6 on his stick against Osgood to put the puck right into his pad to end the series. So, I don't know. That's just my recollection of it. I was going to say 0-1 with the Devils and the Avs, but I didn't want to include a rival. So that was my next choice.
Fair. So I won't include the Rangers here. Or I'm not going to cheap shot and go with like Flyers or Rangers. I'm going to go recent with these. And I've actually got 3 that come to mind, especially because like this was like 3 years in a row that this happened. So like everybody loved Pittsburgh early on when Crosby was drafted number 1 overall. And, once they finally won the cup in 2009, it was a huge moment. And it was like that moment of just like, well, you either, die a good guy or you live long enough to become the villain. And that's what happened with Pittsburgh. They lived long enough to become the villain. And in 2 back-to-back Stanley Cups, they won back-to-back Stanley Cups, but against teams that people really wanted to finally see win the cup. And that was the first time in 2016 against the San Jose Sharks, ironically coached by Pete DeBoer. And in 2017, the Nashville Predators. Both teams seen as the good guys, just like the underdog. Is it finally going to be their moment? Are they finally going to win? And just couldn't happen. And then the next year, the good guys finally won in 2018 because so many people wanted to see Alexander Ovechkin raise the cup, and Washington did. And they beat the incoming expansion team, the Vegas Golden Knights, which a lot of people were kind of mad about at the time. It's like a team that really, truly didn't earn it at that point. And Washington was seen as that team, which is like, if it's going to be anytime, it's going to be now. If it's going to be anytime they're going to win the cup, it's going to be now. And they did. And thank God they did, because I haven't really smelled the Stanley Cup since, unfortunately, in playoff berths. But those are my takes. What are your takes? Maybe you have something a little bit more old school based on what we mentioned. Maybe there's something from the 70s, 60s, 80s, 90s that you guys are thinking of. Comment down below with your reaction to the question of the week, as well as other reactions from our reflections on the semifinals and the news of the week as well. Next week, we're going to be coming at you with Stanley Cup coverage. So you guys got to get hyped for that. You got to make sure that you check that out. We're going to be coming live at you next week with all of those videos, more than likely before puck drop in those games, to react live, as well as react live for whoever does win the Stanley Cup. But to do all this, you got to make sure that you check us out down below at i80sports.com. And while you're there checking out our awesome NHL content, Pat's on back there. But while you're checking out the NHL content, you got to make sure that you're also there to check out the NFL, the MLS, and college football and NBA content that is there as well. And while you're there, hit up our shop. Get yourself a t-shirt as low as $8 to help beat the heat this summer. And while you are checking out our website, if you're on Twitter, make sure you check out and follow our Twitter at i80_sports NHL. The road to 1,000 is on. For those following already, thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome as per usual. But while you're also here, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe as usual. We're climbing and climbing and climbing. We want you guys to stay on board with us with this awesome content that we're putting out. But I'm Brian. He's been Tom. This has been our talk on the Stanley Cup, and the Stanley Cup is right around the corner. Get hyped, because it's almost time. This has been I-80 Sports.